The platform stretched endlessly under the gray December sky. Olivia Bennett hurried through the crowd at Chicago Union Station, her camera bag bouncing against her hip with every rushed step. She was running late again, something her sister would definitely remind her about when she arrived in Philadelphia. The 8:15 a.m. Amtrak departure was her last chance to make it in time for the family dinner. Her breath came in short puffs as she climbed aboard, scanning the car numbers until she found her seat. Car 7, seat 12A. The window seat was already occupied by a man who seemed entirely too calm for a Monday morning. He wore a simple navy sweater and jeans, his dark hair slightly messy in a way that suggested he had stopped caring about perfection somewhere along the way. A leather journal rested on his lap, filled with handwritten notes she could not quite read. Olivia mumbled an apology as she squeezed past him, shoving her bag into the overhead compartment. The man looked up briefly, offered a polite nod, and returned to his writing. His eyes were hazel, tired but kind, the eyes of someone who had seen both triumph and loss. She settled into her seat, pulling out her phone to text her sister. The familiar anxiety crept in as she thought about the weekend ahead. Family gatherings always reminded her of what she had lost. Her fiancé had left her 8 months ago, just 3 weeks before their wedding. The invitations had already been sent. The venue had been paid for. Her entire life had been ready to begin, and then it simply ended. The silent understanding. The train pulled away from the station with a gentle lurch. Olivia pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the city fade into industrial yards and frozen fields. The rhythmic clatter of the wheels should have been soothing, but instead it felt like a countdown to another painful family conversation about her future. The man beside her closed his journal and placed it carefully in the seat pocket. He pulled out a thermos and poured himself a cup of coffee. The rich aroma filled the small space between them, warm and inviting. Without a word, he reached into his bag and produced a second cup, offering it to her with a slight smile. Olivia blinked in surprise. Strangers on trains did not usually share their coffee. She hesitated, then accepted it with a quiet thank you. The warmth spread through her cold fingers, and for the first time that morning, she felt her shoulders relax. They sat in comfortable silence for nearly an hour. Olivia watched the landscape change from urban sprawl to rural emptiness. Bare trees lined the horizon like pencil sketches against white snow. The man beside her seemed content to simply exist in the moment, not scrolling through his phone or fidgeting with impatience. His presence was steady, undemanding, and strangely reassuring. Breaking the silence, when Olivia finally spoke, her voice was softer than she intended. "Thank you for the coffee. That was really kind." He turned toward her, his expression gentle. "You looked like you needed it more than I did." She laughed, a sound that surprised her. "That obvious?" He shrugged. "I know the look of someone carrying too much. I have seen it in the mirror often enough." Olivia studied him more carefully. He had the quiet confidence of someone who had once commanded rooms full of people, but had chosen to step away from that life. There was a sadness around his edges, the kind that never fully disappears but learns to coexist with joy. "I am Olivia," she offered, extending her hand. "Nathan," he replied, shaking it firmly. His hand was warm, his grip neither too strong nor too weak. It felt honest. Stories between strangers, the conversation unfolded naturally after that. Olivia told him about her work as a wedding photographer, how she captured other people's happiness while her own had slipped away. She spoke about the heartbreak, the embarrassment of canceling everything, the weight of starting over at 27 when everyone else seemed to have their lives figured out. Nathan listened without interruption, his attention complete. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. "Starting over is not failure," he said finally. "It is courage. Most people stay in the wrong places because leaving feels harder than staying." Olivia felt something crack open inside her chest. She had been waiting for someone to say that, to tell her that walking away from the wrong thing was not the same as giving up. Her family had pitied her. Her friends had tried to fix her. But this stranger on a train simply understood. The revelation. "What about you?" she asked. What brings you to this train instead of somewhere more important? Nathan smiled, a hint of irony in his expression. I used to think everywhere was important. I built a company that people said would change the world. I worked 18-hour days. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, quiet mornings. Then my company sold, and everyone called me successful. But success felt like standing in an empty room filled with applause that never stops echoing. He paused, looking out at the passing fields. I took a year off to figure out what actually mattered. Turns out, it was the small things I had been too busy to notice. Morning coffee, slow trains, conversations with strangers who remind you that we are all just trying to find our way. Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. She had spent months thinking she had lost everything. But maybe she had only lost the wrong version of everything. Maybe the right version was still waiting to be found. The train crossed a bridge over a frozen river. Sunlight broke through the clouds, turning the ice into a field of diamonds. Nathan reached into his bag and pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper. He handed it to Olivia with a shy smile. "Open it later," he said, "when you need a reminder." She held the package in her hands, feeling its weight. "What is it?" "A book," he answered. "About starting over. It helped me. Maybe it will help you too." Olivia looked at him, this stranger who had shared his coffee and his story, and now his hope. "Thank you," she whispered. Nathan nodded, turning back to the window. Outside, the world rushed past, full of possibilities neither of them had expected to find on an ordinary Monday morning. The train moved steadily through Indiana, cutting through small towns that looked like paintings frozen in time. Church steeples rose above snow-covered roofs. Smoke curled from chimneys into the pale afternoon sky. Olivia watched it all, her hands still wrapped around the empty coffee cup Nathan had given her hours ago. She had placed his gift carefully in her camera bag, resisting the urge to open it immediately. There was something sacred about his gesture, something that deserved the right moment. Instead, she found herself wanting to know more about the man who had quietly shifted the axis of her terrible morning. Nathan had returned to his journal, his pen moving across the page in smooth, confident strokes. Olivia noticed the way he paused sometimes, thinking before writing, as if each word mattered. She recognized that careful attention. It was the same way she approached her photography, waiting for the exact moment when light and emotion intersected. "Can I ask you something?" she said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. He looked up, setting his pen down. "Of course, why did you really give up everything? Most people spend their whole lives chasing what you had." Nathan leaned back in his seat, considering the question. His gaze drifted to the window where their reflections merged with the passing landscape. "I lost someone," he said quietly. "My younger sister. She was 24, full of dreams about opening a bookstore in Portland. She kept saying she would do it after she saved enough money, after she paid off her student loans, after everything was perfect." He paused, his jaw tightening. "She died in a car accident 2 years ago. Never opened that bookstore. Never stopped waiting for the perfect time. And I realized I had been doing the same thing, waiting to live until everything was exactly right. But life does not wait for permission." Shared scars, Olivia felt her throat constrict. "I am so sorry," she whispered. Nathan smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Thank you." Her name was Rebecca. She would have liked you. She always said that artists see the world differently, that they notice the beauty everyone else walks past. Olivia thought about her own relationship with art. After her engagement ended, she had stopped taking personal photographs. Every wedding she shot felt like a performance, capturing joy she no longer believed in. Her camera had become a shield rather than a window. "I stopped creating for myself," she admitted. "After everything fell apart, photography became just work. I point and click and collect payment. But the passion, the reason I started doing this, that disappeared." Nathan turned to face her fully. "What made you fall in love with it in the first place?" She closed her eyes, remembering. "My grandmother. She had this old film camera, and she would take me on walks through her neighborhood. She taught me to look for moments, not just images. A mother tying her daughter's shoe. An old couple holding hands on a bench. She said photography was not about capturing what people looked like, but who they were in their most honest moments." "That is beautiful." Nathan said. When did you stop looking for those moments? When I stopped believing they existed, Olivia answered. When my fiancé left, he said I was too focused on other people's stories and not enough on building our own. Maybe he was right. Maybe I got so good at documenting love that I forgot how to actually live it. The confession. Nathan reached into his bag again, this time pulling out his phone. He scrolled for a moment, then handed it to her. On the screen was a photograph of a young woman with bright red hair, laughing in front of an empty storefront. The joy in her expression was so pure it made Olivia's chest ache. That was Rebecca, he said. 6 months before she died. She had just signed the lease for her bookstore. This was the only photo she let me take of her there. She was superstitious about celebrating before things were finished. Olivia studied the image. The composition was amateur, but the emotion was perfect. This is a moment, she said softly. This is exactly what my grandmother taught me to find. Nathan took the phone back, looking at the photo with an expression that mixed love and regret. After she died, I went through her apartment. She had notebooks filled with business plans, sketches of how she wanted the store to look, lists of books she wanted to feature. Everything was ready except her courage to begin. He met Olivia's eyes. That is when I realized success meant nothing if I was not actually living. So I sold my company, walked away from the corporate world, and started doing things that scared me. Taking trains instead of planes, talking to strangers, writing in journals instead of spreadsheets, trying to honor her memory by refusing to wait for perfect. The turning point. The train slowed as it approached Fort Wayne. The afternoon light had shifted to a deeper gold, painting everything in warm amber. Olivia felt something shift inside her, a loosening of the tight knot she had carried for months. Your fiancé was wrong, Nathan said suddenly. You were not too focused on other people's stories. You were seeing what he could not. That love is not something you build like a house. It is something you discover in the small, honest moments between people. Olivia looked at him, startled by his certainty. He continued, his voice gentle but firm. Anyone who leaves someone for caring too much is someone who does not understand what caring means. You did not fail at love. You succeeded at recognizing when it was not real. Tears spilled down Olivia's cheeks before she could stop them. She had spent 8 months believing she was broken, that her capacity to see beauty in others had somehow made her blind to her own worth. But Nathan's words reached something deeper, a truth she had been too hurt to acknowledge. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, laughing through the tears. Sorry, I did not plan to cry on a stranger. Nathan smiled, handing her a clean handkerchief from his pocket. I did not plan to share my entire life story with someone I met 4 hours ago. But sometimes the universe puts people in the right place at the right time. The gift of perspective. As the train pulled away from the station, Olivia felt lighter. The heaviness that had pressed on her chest for months had begun to dissolve. She realized that Nathan had given her something more valuable than coffee or a book. He had given her permission to stop punishing herself. She pulled out her camera for the first time in weeks, not to work, but to see. Through the viewfinder, the world looked different. She captured the curve of Nathan's hand as he wrote in his journal. The way light caught the steam rising from a passenger's coffee 3 rows ahead. The reflection of a child's face pressed against the window. Nathan noticed her shooting and smiled. Finding those moments again? Trying to, she said. It feels different now. Less like documenting and more like remembering. He nodded. That is what art should be. A way of paying attention. A way of saying this matters, this is worth holding on to. The promise. The conductor announced they would reach Pittsburgh in 2 hours. The journey was more than half over. Olivia felt an unexpected sadness at the thought of this conversation ending. Nathan had become more than a stranger on a train. He had become a mirror reflecting back the parts of herself she had forgotten. Thank you, she said. For the coffee, the book, the honesty, for reminding me that broken things can still be beautiful. Nathan closed his journal, his expression serious. You were never broken, Olivia. You were just waiting for someone to see you clearly. Do not let one person's inability to love you make you doubt your capacity to be loved. The train rounded a curve, and sunlight flooded the cabin. In that golden light, Olivia saw Nathan not as a successful entrepreneur or a grieving brother, but simply as a human being trying to make meaning from pain, just like her. She reached across the space between them and squeezed his hand briefly. "Whatever happens next, I will remember this. I will remember you." Nathan squeezed back, his smile reaching his eyes for the first time. "Good. Because some meetings are not accidents. They are course corrections disguised as coincidence. Outside, the landscape transformed again. Fields gave way to forests, forests to rivers, rivers to the first hints of mountains in the distance. The world kept changing, kept moving forward, and for the first time in 8 months, Olivia felt ready to move with it. The train crossed into Pennsylvania as the sky deepened into shades of violet and rose. The setting sun painted the Allegheny Mountains in colors that seemed impossible, as if nature itself was putting on a farewell performance. Olivia had her camera out now, no longer hiding behind professional distance, but engaging with the world the way she used to before heartbreak made her cautious. Nathan watched her work with quiet admiration. She moved with purpose, framing shots through the window, adjusting settings with practiced ease. This was different from the woman who had boarded the train that morning, shoulders hunched under invisible weight. Something had shifted, not completely, but enough to let light back in. "You should photograph people again," he said as she reviewed her images. "Not just weddings. Real people in real moments." Olivia lowered her camera, considering his words. "I do not know if I am ready for that. Weddings feel safe now. I know the script, the expectations. Documenting real life feels too vulnerable." Nathan closed his journal and turned fully toward her. "Can I tell you what I learned after Rebecca died? The things we avoid because they make us vulnerable are usually the exact things we need to move toward. Safety is comfortable, but it is not the same as living. The unveiling." She set her camera down on the tray table between them. "You make it sound simple. It is not simple," he admitted. "It is terrifying. After I sold my company, I spent 6 months doing absolutely nothing. I told myself I was taking time off, but really I was hiding. I was afraid that without the title and the success, I would discover there was nothing underneath. That I had spent 15 years building something impressive while forgetting to build myself." "What changed?" Olivia asked. He smiled, remembering. "I was in a coffee shop in Seattle, and there was this old man sitting alone reading poetry. He must have been 80, maybe older. When he finished his book, he closed it with such satisfaction, such complete contentment, that I started crying right there in public, because I realized I had never felt that way about anything, not even my biggest achievements." Nathan paused, his voice growing softer. I walked over and asked him what he was reading. He showed me the book, Mary Oliver, and he said something I will never forget. He said the purpose of life is not to arrive at death safely in a well-preserved body, but to skid in sideways, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, loudly proclaiming what a ride it has been. Olivia felt goosebumps rise on her arms. "That is beautiful. That is when I started writing," Nathan continued. "That is when I started taking trains and talking to strangers and trying to figure out what kind of person I wanted to be, not what kind of success I wanted to achieve. And every day is still hard. Every day I still miss my sister. But at least now, I am living in a way that would make her proud." The truth revealed. The train slowed as it approached Harrisburg. The platform lights flickered on in the gathering dusk, casting long shadows across the tracks. Olivia realized they had less than an hour before reaching Philadelphia, before this unexpected connection would end and return them both to their separate lives. She reached into her camera bag and pulled out the package Nathan had given her earlier. "May I open it now?" He nodded, a hint of nervousness crossing his face. Olivia carefully unwrapped the brown paper. Inside was a worn paperback book titled The Art of Beginning Again by an author she did not recognize. But it was not just the book that made her breath catch. Tucked inside the front cover was a handwritten note on expensive cardstock. She read it silently. "For whoever needs this, starting over is not failure. It is the brave choice to write a better story. Keep going. The best chapters are still unwritten." Below the message was a signature, and below that a phone number. Olivia looked up at Nathan, her eyes wide. "This is your handwriting," he nodded slowly. "I keep several copies of that book with me. I buy them from independent bookstores, the kind Rebecca wanted to open. I leave them on trains, in coffee shops, in airport waiting areas. Each one has that note inside. It is my way of honoring her, of sending hope out into the world the way she always did." "Why give one to me specifically?" Olivia asked. "Because you reminded me of why I started doing this," Nathan said. "I have left maybe 50 books in random places over the past year. But this morning, when I saw you rushing onto the train looking like the weight of the world was crushing you, I knew this one was meant for you. Not left behind for you to find, but given to you directly." The exchange Olivia traced her fingers over the handwriting. "How many people have called this number?" Nathan looked surprised. "You are the first to ask about it. Honestly, no one has called. I think most people assume it is just a nice gesture, not an actual invitation." "But it is," Olivia said. "An actual invitation." He held her gaze. "Yes. It is my way of saying that if someone needs to talk, to share their story, to know they are not alone, I am here. Rebecca taught me that connection matters more than success. I am just trying to live that lesson." The train began moving again, pulling away from Harrisburg toward the final leg of their journey. Olivia carefully placed the book back in her bag, but she memorized the phone number first. Something told her she would need it, not right away, but eventually. She pulled out her own phone and opened a new note. Then she turned the screen toward Nathan. "This is my email. I want you to have it, because I think this conversation is not finished. I think maybe it is just beginning." Nathan smiled, genuine warmth flooding his expression. He took out his phone and saved her information. "I would like that very much." The arrival Philadelphia appeared on the horizon, its skyline glittering against the darkening sky. The train began its final approach, slowing as it navigated through the rail yards and industrial corridors that marked the edges of the city. Passengers around them started gathering their belongings, checking phones, preparing to re-enter the world they had left behind that morning. But Olivia and Nathan remained still, neither one quite ready for this moment to end. "What will you do this weekend?" Nathan asked. Olivia sighed. "Survive family questions about my love life. Photograph my sister looking radiant with her fiancé. Pretend I am fine when people look at me with pity." "And are you fine?" he asked gently. She thought about it honestly. "I am better than I was this morning. You gave me something I did not know I needed. Permission to stop apologizing for caring too much, for seeing too clearly, for wanting love to mean something real." Nathan reached across and took her hand, holding it firmly. "You never needed permission, Olivia. You just needed someone to reflect back what was already true. You are not broken. You are extraordinary. And whoever gets to love you next will be the luckiest person alive." Tears filled her eyes again, but this time they felt cleansing rather than painful. "Thank you," she whispered. "The goodbye." The train pulled into 30th Street Station with a gentle hiss of brakes. The platform stretched out before them, crowded with people waiting to board, others rushing to meet arriving passengers. The journey that had begun in Chicago 8 hours ago was coming to its end. Nathan gathered his things slowly, deliberately. Olivia did the same, neither one eager to step off the train and break whatever spell had been cast between them. As they stood in the aisle, Nathan turned to her one last time. "I meant what I said about the phone number. If you ever need to talk, if you ever want to share your work, if you ever just need someone who understands, call me. This does not have to end here." Olivia nodded, her throat tight with emotion. "I will. I promise." They walked together through the station, their paths aligned for just a few more moments. At the taxi stand, they finally stopped. Nathan's hotel was downtown. Olivia's sister lived in the suburbs. They would go in opposite directions now. Nathan extended his hand, then changed his mind and pulled her into a brief, warm hug. "Thank you for reminding me why I do this," he said into her hair. "Thank you for being brave enough to be honest with a stranger." Olivia hugged him back, memorizing the feeling of being held by someone who saw her clearly. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. "Thank you for reflecting back the person I forgot I could be, the new beginning." They separated, and Olivia watched as Nathan climbed into a taxi. He waved once through the window, and then he was gone, absorbed into the city traffic. She stood there for a moment, feeling the December cold bite at her cheeks, feeling more alive than she had in months. Her phone buzzed. A text from her sister asking where she was. Reality calling her back. But as Olivia climbed into her own taxi and gave the driver her sister's address, she felt different. The book in her bag was a physical reminder that kindness existed, that strangers could become mirrors, that one conversation could shift the trajectory of a life. She pulled out her camera and looked through the images she had captured that afternoon. There, among the landscapes and light studies, was a single photograph of Nathan's reflection in the train window, his face thoughtful and kind, his eyes looking toward some distant horizon. She had taken it without realizing, her instincts capturing what her conscious mind had not yet understood. This was a moment worth holding on to. This was a person worth remembering. As the taxi merged onto the highway, Olivia opened the book Nathan had given her. On the first page, in addition to his note, he had written something else. The best stories begin with unexpected meetings and honest conversations. Keep telling yours? She smiled, closed the book, and looked out at the city lights spreading before her like stars fallen to earth. Her sister's engagement party would still be difficult. Her family's questions would still sting. The absence of her former fiancé would still echo in quiet moments. But now she had something else, too. A reminder that she was not broken. A promise that better chapters were still unwritten. A phone number that represented possibility. And most importantly, she had remembered how to see the world as an artist again. Not through the lens of pain and disappointment, but through the lens of hope and connection and the beautiful, unexpected moments that happen when two strangers share a train ride and decide to be honest. The taxi carried her forward into the December night. Behind her, the train station grew smaller. Ahead, her sister's house glowed with warm light and the promise of family, complicated and loving and imperfect. And somewhere in the city, Nathan was checking into his hotel, probably thinking about the same conversation, probably feeling the same shift in perspective that comes from genuine human connection. Two lives that had touched briefly, but meaningfully. Two stories that would continue separately, but forever. Changed by a single morning when a wedding photographer and a former entrepreneur chose to be vulnerable with each other on a train heading east through the winter landscape. Olivia touched the book in her bag one more time, a talisman of transformation. Then she took out her phone and typed a message to the number he had given her. Thank you for today. Thank you for the coffee, the book, the honesty, and the reminder that broken things become beautiful when given the right light. This is not goodbye. This is see you soon. She hit send and watched the message deliver. Outside, snowflakes began to fall, soft and quiet, covering the city in new white. A fresh start. A blank page. The beginning of something she could not yet name but was no longer afraid to discover. The end.